Hello, good evening, or good morning, or good afternoon, or good day, wherever you may happen to be, whatever part of the world you may happen to be in. It's really interesting. We have a pretty small audience for these readings, and yet, certainly, this particular slot is. We're all over the place here. We got people from Europe and Asia and the Antipodes, Australia, New Zealand. Very interesting. Anyway, and always a pleasure to see you all and to check in with you and to have you with me while I'm reading. It's been another interesting week, although things are slowly getting more normal again. Working, of course, always working. I don't really do much else most of the time. Hang out with my family, work, occasionally leave the house, like I have several times this week to deal with car issues, which has been the main thing that has kept me occupied this week. And hoping that I have them solved by the time I have to go back over the hill in a couple of days. Because otherwise I will have to walk, and it's a long walk over to my family on the other side of the hill here. But that won't mean much to most of you out there who don't know the geography of the area. But anyway, so hope you're having a good weekend so far. No serious complaints here. Other than the stuff that's been occupying the family for the last month and a half or so, but everything else is pretty normal. We're working away at various things, enjoying a spate of very nice weather, which I hope is the same for many of you out there. I know it's not true everywhere, so believe me, I'm not gloating. I'm just enjoying it. We had some rain last week, which was, in California is a great thing. There's like never a time in California when it rains when we don't have, most of us are not going, thank God. We really need it. What else? God, what else? Nothing really much. It's been like I said, it's been a week of hunkered down and working or taking the car back and forth to the garage. Not like my garage here, but the auto dealership place that it originally came from, where they still do service on it. And it's probably just about time for that car to be retired. It's not that old a car. It's only 8 years old, but it has just, several kids have learned to drive in it. My wife still occasionally forgets that she knows how to drive, because of coming from England and I guess not starting, almost in childhood as we Californians do. But as a result of all these different people driving it, honestly, not me. It's just pieces are falling off of it. It's scraped up. It's got, I'm like driving to the garage a couple days ago, and all of a sudden there's this like piece of plastic that I guess goes over the wheel, between the fender and the wheel. It's just like a plastic trim, and it just suddenly flips off, and it's just like going blah, 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 in the breeze. Just the thing is falling apart. So, at some point, if we can afford it, I'll have to get another one, because it's just, I don't, our kids are, some of our kids are now living about 400 miles away, 360, something like that. I don't know. Anyway, an all-day drive. And I do not feel confident right now about taking that car out. So that's one of the things on my mind. And of course, because of family stuff, having to go back and forth over the hill. Anyway, so I'm trying to think if there's anything else. No, just writing. And because I'm at the end of the Navigator's Children, there's a huge amount of information that has to be, because I've spent years here setting all this stuff up, and there's all these little things and clues and foreshadowings and all that, and they all have to pay off at the end, or otherwise you people will be angry with me, and I wouldn't want that. So, but of course you can't just, tempting as it is, you can't just have, the equivalent of like a murder mystery where the detective lines everybody up in the parlor and says, one of you is the murderer, and now I'm going to explain which one and why. You can't just have that kind of information dump, especially not as much information as there is in the end of this set of stories, because it links all the way back to stuff that, the Dragonbone chair, for God's sakes. This is like 10 books worth of stuff that's finally coming to a conclusion. So as a result, there's a great deal of weaving and saying, God, that's just too much of a pure information dump. I'm going to have to find some way to stick the exposition in some other way, or at least shorten it dramatically and let the readers fill it in themselves, or come back and explain more about it later on. And so that's the main challenge at the moment, actually. I have no problem writing scenes, making things happen, all that stuff. But to kind of teaspoon in the information that has to be given to the reader, that the reader is owed, that the readers demand, while not making it feel like they are having all this stuff just dumped on them, is challenging and interesting. So that's what I'm working at. And I'm about 950 pages of manuscript on the book right now. And I think the last one, Into the Narrow Dark, was more like 900 period when it was finished, and I probably got another 100 pages to go in this one, maybe less. I don't know. We'll see. So it's a good solid book. I mean, yes, I divided the last volume into two, but it would have been longer than To Green Angel Tower, so obviously that wasn't going to work. Anyway, it was a nice idea while I had it. While I dreamed that I was actually going to finish a trilogy in 3 books. I did once. I did Bobby Dollar. I finished it in 3 books. Of course, they were much shorter books, and it wasn't really meant to be a linked trilogy in the first place. It was supposed to be 3 separate books that just had some theme material running between them, and it wound up becoming another big, complicated thing. My cross to bear. Not to martyr myself, but that's definitely my cross to bear, is these big, complicated things that I keep saying, I don't want to do that again. I want to do something simple. I want to do the fantasy or science fiction novel equivalent of a haiku, just ephemeral and brief and blah, blah, blah. And occasionally I do that with short stories or short novels, but the big ones just turn into these monstrosities. So that's where I'm at. I'm corralling this monstrosity and trying to bring it to ground and hog-tie it and do whatever one does next after somebody has hog-tied something. Presumably send it to a hog something. I was going to say a hog butcher, which is probably correct, but that's not a very nice way to think of one's own book. And in fact, getting it to readers is not the equivalent of butchering it. It's rather the reverse. It's making it all worthwhile. Anyway, so what I'm going to do right now is I am going to check in with all the kind people who are dropping their comments and say hello, and then we're going to get to reading. So first off, Andre, hello. May my endings be as great as my beginnings. Endings are the hardest part, really. Well, now the middle part is hard too. The beginnings are the easiest. I swear they are. Beginnings are when everything is still young and the world is fresh, and you have a childlike innocence about whatever you're working on, and everything still seems possible. And it is truly a wonderful, magical thing. Actually, the very best time is before you've written a single word, while you're still planning, because at that point, not only do you have the freedom to think about, it can be anything, it can do anything, I could do this, I could do that, which is glorious. But you also have the freedom of not actually writing, because writing is work, cranking out those pages, telling the story, trying to make it good while making it do what it's supposed to do is actually work. And I love having a job I love, but it's still work, whereas just purely thinking is something I would do for fun anyway. So the best parts are before you start, but the beginnings of books are also lovely. The middle and the ending are difficult for different reasons. The middle is, of course, where you're trying to keep it from just totally getting out of control, but you also don't have you don't have the benchmarks that you have for the beginning and the ending, because you've figured out some of the ending, which you have to do, when you're starting. And the beginning is all the stuff you've been thinking about. And you get into the middle, though, and you're like, oh, yeah, right. I mean, I've got to get all these characters from hither to yon, et cetera, but also things have to happen, and the thing has to move forward, even though I know there's at least 1 or 2 books here which are not going to be a beginning and they're not going to be an end. So that's complicated too. And then, as I mentioned, the ending, especially ending these big books, is highly complicated because you have to pay all this stuff off without just, giving the readers a list at the end of all the things you didn't tell them, but now you're going to and explain them. So anyway, Andre, I hope the endings will be as great as the beginnings, or at least as much fun. Chris, good morning, my friend. Good to see you. Ronnie, good morning. Good to see you too. Hazel, hello, sweetie. There's my mother-in-law. Good morning, good morning. Hope all is well at your place too. We're doing well here under the circumstances. We're doing quite well. Your daughter spent pretty much the entire day crocheting. That seemed to be what she wanted to do today. Excuse me, I'm very kind of not croupy, but yeah. So I may be doing that throat clearing thing a few times during the broadcast, and I apologize. But anyway, so I was just playing YouTube videos for her, mostly science and history, that we were watching together while she crocheted. So that was our evening, and a very nice evening it was. Anyway, good to see you, sweetie. Love to everybody there. Andrew, good morning. It is morning, in fact. It is now 1:12, which means I better get on with saying hello to people so I have time to read a good least chunk. Petra, good morning, good morning. And good morning to Christina also, having breakfast in Berlin. That sounds nice. I wish I was there. I like Berlin. Sarah, hello, hello. Good to see you. Debbie, good morning, making apple jam. Ooh, that sounds nice. Kristen, hello, good to see you. Mark, checking in from Yorkshire. Chilly? No, couldn't be. Anyway, on the other hand, I'm sure it's beautiful. I'm sure even if it's foggy and cold, it is probably still gorgeous in Yorkshire, depending on what part of it you're in. Wouter, hello, hello. Good evening, good morning, good day, good night, and all that to you too. More Binnebek tonight. Yes, definitely. Yes, Simon was a bit of a whiny teen when he started out. And as a matter of fact, I remember after the Dragonbone chair came out, but before Stone of Farewell, where he takes his first real steps toward maturity, a lot of people who contacted me or wrote me letters or whatever were like, Simon is such a brat. I just wanted to smack him, and they said the same thing about Miriamel too, interestingly, which didn't bother me at all, because one of the things that I like to do, especially with a big book, is really kind of show you in a gradated way how people change. It doesn't happen all at once. It doesn't happen because you face one crisis and suddenly you're a different person or whatever. It's incremental. We all know that. You don't learn all at once, and in fact, sometimes you never learn at all. But what you do learn, you tend to pick up in bits and pieces, and largely from making mistakes. So, yes, Simon is a bit of a whiny teen at the beginning. He hasn't really faced much hardship until now. And of course, when you first get into something that's really bad, it really tests you. And he's just begun to be tested. Iris, hello, good evening, and good morning to you. Good to see you. Holger, hello. I am glad you're here. Glad you're here. Ilva, hi, sweetie. Thank you for sending the love. We send love back to you and to all of yours. We're doing okay here. We're hanging in. Nicole, good morning. Checking in, or maybe Nicola, since it's from Germany and last name Glasse. So either Nicole or Nicola, however you prefer. You can always let me know, and then I'll do my best to remember. But anyway, good morning to you too from sunny Germany. Or in sunny Germany. I'm in sunny California, except it's not sunny because it's 1:15 in the morning. Penny, hello. Good to see you. Thank you for joining in. And Debbie is checking in from Norfolk, making apple chutney. Ah, good stuff. Suzanne, ahoy. Good to see you. Tracy, hello, and good morning to you too. Who else have I sent to? Sean, yo, dude. Good to see you, man. How are you? Michiel. Good to see you too, as always. Who else? Chris already said hello to. Shannon Sunny in New York. I assume that's New York. NY, that's certainly in America. That always means New York, but that's really early in the morning. 4:15 in New York right now? Goodness. NY could be something else, though. Could be Nueva Yucatan? I don't know. I mean, I'm open-minded. My glasses are crooked, but my mind is open. Anyway, see, I hate seeing myself because I keep looking at myself and going, who is that weird old guy? Jeremy! Hi! Jeremy did a murder mystery theater show. It's always good to stand in a hotel on Saturday night with your ear pressed to the crack of the wall, listening for your cue to bust into the room with a plastic knife in your gut, screaming that you've been stabbed. So true. So very true. Janet, hello, good evening, and nice to have you here from Sydney, one of my favorite places. I truly think Sydney Harbor is one of the most gorgeous human places on Earth. It is totally fabulous. Sarah, how do you make the sign of the tree? Sign of the tree is very simple, actually. It's these fingers held up, and then the rest of the fingers brought down to it. So it's branches. It's hard to do it here so you can see it, but it's branches and fingers, or just two fingers or two middle fingers. It doesn't matter, but it's the branches. It's this. It's branches of the tree and then the trunk of the tree. I hope that makes some sense out of it now. Anyway, so that's it. And you know, I'm sorry I can't show you properly how to make it on one's breast, but it would be basically like that. And let's see, who else? There's Mark talking about Saddleworth Moore. And I think I've said hello. Oh, I went backward here. Okay, that's why I'm confused. I went backward. There's Jeremy, Janet, Michiel, or Michiel. I've always pronounced it weird. Kirsten, there's a new name. Hello, Kirsten, from cloudy Germany. That's another Germany. I know it's the same Germany, it's just another part. And Nicole. Okay, so Nicole. Nicole. Oh yeah, we just had somebody who was working for us, a lovely man named Sebastian, whose last name was Grasse, Grasse. You're probably not a relation. It's probably just a coincidence, but it's good to see the name again. Sebastian did a wonderful job for us doing the painting that we had to do here. Becky, hello. And Manda, checking in from Melbourne, another one of my favorite places. So, now I've said hello to everybody. I probably better get reading before it gets too late. I've already diddle-daddled and shilly-shallied and all variety of other expressions for time wasting. Faffing, there's a good one. There's a good Britishism. I love Britishisms, and as I think I told you, I've probably said I tried very hard not to get an accent while I was there, but I definitely picked up tons of expressions, and faffing is one of them, meaning just to mess around or waste time or not get to something that you should really get to. At least that was my understanding of the phrase. When I was playing, I was played in several softball leagues when I was living in England, and we were always using that term, quit faffing about, let's get to this, or, come on, game's over, stop faffing about, let's get to the pub. Those were basically the two things that people were faffing. They were not hurrying to the pub. That was the big complaint. Okay, so the last section we were reading, Simon has now met up with Binnabik and has gotten over his initial distrust because Binnabik the troll has fed him, which has done wonders for Simon's mood. And so here's the last couple of sentences before we got to the point, or last 3 sentences, whatever. In truth, Simon had forgotten the original question, but he cared little. There was something quite charming about this little person, an earnestness beneath the good humor. Simon felt himself to be in good, although small, hands. We're reading, I think this is chapter 18. Yeah, chapter 18, A Net of Stars, but we're about halfway into it. It was hard not to notice that they were now headed in a westerly direction. As they tramped along, the slanting rays of the sun were nearly full in their eyes. Sometimes a dazzling bolt would find its way through a chink in the trees, and Simon would stumble for a moment, the forest air suddenly full of glittering pinpricks of light. He asked Bennebic about their westward turn. "Oh, yes," the troll replied. "We are heading ourselves toward the Knock. We shall not get there today, though. Soon we will stop to make some camp and eat." Simon was glad to hear this, but could not forego asking another question. It was, after all, his adventure, too. What's the Knock?" "Oh, it is not a dangerous thing, Simon. It is the point at which the southern foothills of Weldhelm dip down with a saddle-like air, and no one can easily be leaving the thick and not too safe forest and cross to the Weldhelm road. As I was saying, though, we shall not reach it this day. Let us cast around for a camp." Within a few furlongs they found a site that looked promising. A cluster of large rocks on a gently sloping bank beside a forest stream. The water splashed quietly along a course of round, dove-colored stones, eddying noisily around the twisted branches that had tumbled into the stream, disappearing at last into a thicket a few yards below. A stand of aspens, green coins for leaves, rattled softly in the beginnings of an evening breeze. The pair quickly built a fire circle with dry stones found by the watercourse. Kantaka seemed fascinated by their project, darting close at intervals to growl and lightly snap at the rocks as they were carried laboriously into place. A short while later the troll had a campfire flickering, pale and spectral in the last potent sunbeams of the fading afternoon. "Now, Simon," he said, elbowing the intrusive Kantaka into an unwilling crouch, "we find it hunting time. Let us discover some suitable supper bird, and I will show you clever tricks." He rubbed his hands together. "But how will we catch them?" Simon looked at the white arrow clutched in his own sweat-grimed paw. "Will we have to throw this at them?" Bennebic chortled, slapping his hide-suited knee. "You have some funniness for a scullion boy. No, I said I will show you clever tricks. Do you see, where I live there is only a short season for the hunting of birds. In the cold winter there are not any birds at all, except for the cloud-high flying snow geese, who pass our mountain home on their way to the northeastern wastes. But in some of the southern lands I have traveled, they are hunting and eating only birds. There I learned some cleverness. I will show you." Bennebic picked up his walking staff and signed for Simon to follow. Kantaka leaped up, but the troll waved her off. "Hinikaya, old friend," he told her kindly. Her ears twitched and her gray brow furrowed. "We are going on a mission of stealthiness, and your big paws will not be a help." The wolf turned and slouched back to stretch by the campfire. "Not that she cannot be deadly quiet," the troll told Simon, "but it is only when she wants to, only." They crossed the stream and waded into the underbrush. Within a short time they were into deep woods again. The noise of the water behind them had faded to a murmur. Bennebic squatted down, inviting Simon to join him. "Now we are going to work," he said. He gave his walking stick a quick twist. To Simon's surprise, it separated into two segments. The short one, he now saw, was the handle of a knife whose blade had been concealed within the hollow length of the longer section. The troll upended the longer segment and shook it, and a leather pouch slid out onto the ground. He then removed a small piece from the other end. The long segment was now a hollow tube. Simon laughed with pure delight. "That's wonderful," he exclaimed, "like a conjuring trick." Bennebic nodded sagely. "Surprises in small packages. The Canuck credo, that is." He took the knife up by its cylindrical bone handle and poked for a moment in the hollow tube. Another bone tube slid partway out, and he finished the removal with his fingers. When he held it up for inspection, Simon could see that this tube had a row of holes along one side. A flute? A flute? Yes. Of what good is supper without music following? Benedict put the instrument aside and poked the leather pouch with the knife tip. Unfolded, it revealed a pressed clump of carded wool and yet one more slim tube, this one no longer than a finger. Smaller and smaller we go, yes? The troll twisted this open to show Simon the contents. Tiny needles of bone or ivory packed close together. Simon reached out a hand to touch one of the delicate slivers, but Benedict hastily pulled the container away. Please, no, he said. Be observing. He plucked one of the needles out with a thumb and arched forefinger, holding it up to catch the dying afternoon light. The dart's sharp tip was smeared with some black and sticky substance. Poison? Breathed Simon. Benedict nodded seriously, but his eyes showed a certain excitement. Of course, he said. Not all are so poisoned. It is not a necessity for the killing of small birds, and it has an unpleasant tending to ruin the meat. But one cannot stop a bear or other large, angered creature with only a tiny dart. He slid the envenomed needle down among its fellows and selected another unstained dart. You killed a bear with one? Simon asked, extremely impressed. Yes, I have done it. But the wise troll does not stay in the area while waiting for the bear to know he is dead. The poison is not finishing its work immediately, you are seeing. Very big are bears. While talking, Benedict had torn off a piece of the coarse wool and unraveled the fibers with the point of his knife, fingers working as quickly and competently as Sarah, the upstairs maid, going at the mending. Before this homely memory could summon any companion, Simon's attention was captured again as Benedict began wrapping the threads rapidly around the base of the dart, weaving them over one another until the butt end was a soft globe of wool. When it was finished, he pushed the whole thing, needle and wad, into one end of the hollow walking stick. He wrapped the other needles in their pouch, tucked it in his belt, and handed the rest of the dismantled staff to Simon. Carry these, if you will, please, he said. I do not see many birds here, although quite often they are emerging now for feeding on the insects. It is perhaps we shall have to be settling for a squirrel. Not that they are not tasting good, he hastened to explain as they stepped over a fallen tree, but there is a certain more delicate touch and experience in the hunting of small birds. When the dart hits, you will be understanding. I think it is their flying that touches me so, and how quickly their tiny hearts are beating. Later, in the leaf whisper of the spring evening, as Simon and the little troll lazed by the fire digesting their meal, 2 pigeons and a fat squirrel, Simon thought on what Benedict had said. It was strange to realize how little you understood someone that you had grown to like. How could the troll feel such affection toward something he was going to kill? I certainly don't feel that way about that bloody woodsman, he thought. He probably would have killed me as quickly as he would have killed the Scytha man. But would he have? Would he have taken the axe to Simon? Maybe not. He had thought the Scytha a demon. He had turned his back on Simon, something he would not have done had he feared him. I wonder if he had a wife, Simon suddenly thought. Did he have children? But he was a wicked man. Still, bad men can have children. King Elias has a daughter. Would she feel bad if her father died? I certainly wouldn't. And I don't feel bad that the woodsman is dead. But I would feel sad for his family if they found him dead in the forest that way. I hope he didn't have any family, that he was alone, that he lived all alone in the forest by himself. alone in the forest. Simon started upright, full of fear. He had nearly drifted off, alone, by himself, and helpless. But no. There was Benedict, sitting back against the bank, humming to himself. Simon felt suddenly very grateful for the little man's presence. "Thank you for the supper, Benedict." The troll turned to look at him, an indolent smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "It is happily given. Now you have seen what the southern blow darts can do. Perhaps you would like to learn their using yourself?" "Certainly." "Very good. Then I will be showing you tomorrow. Perhaps then you can be hunting our supper. How long?" Simon found a twig and stirred the embers. "How long will we be traveling together?" The troll closed his eyes and leaned back, scratching his head through his thick black hair. "Oh, a while, at least, I am thinking. You are going to Naglemund, correct? Well, I have sureness I will travel at least the great part of the way there. Is that a fair thing?" "Yes. Yes." Simon felt much better. He too leaned back, wriggling his unshod toes before the coals. "However," Benedict said beside him, "I am still not understanding why you are wishing to go there. I am hearing reports that the Naglemund stronghold is being garrisoned for war. I am hearing rumors that Joshua the prince, whose disappearing became known even in the remote places of my travels, may be hiding there to make war on his brother the king. Do you not know these sayings? Why, if I may so presume, are you going there?" Simon's moment of nonchalance evaporated. "He's just small," he chided himself, "not stupid." He forced himself to breathe deeply several times before answering. "I don't know much about these things, Benedict. My parents are dead, and I have a friend at Naglemund, a harper. All true, more or less, but convincing?" Benedict had not opened his eyes. "There are perhaps better destinations than a forest in comparison for a sieging. Still, you show quite the bravery for setting out alone, although brave and foolish often live in the same cave, as we say. Perhaps if your destination proves not likable to you, you may come and be living with we Canuck. It is a great towering troll you would be." Benedict laughed, a high silly giggle like a scolding squirrel. Simon, despite a certain rawness of nerves, could not help but join in. The fire had burned down to a dull glow, and the surrounding forest was an indeterminate, undistinguished clump of darkness. Simon had pulled his cloak tightly about him. Benedict was absently running his fingers across the holes of his flute as he stared up into the velvety patch of sky visible through a gap in the trees. "Look," he said, extending his instrument to point up into the night. "Do you see?" Simon tilted his head closer to the little man's. Nothing was in view above but a thin train of stars. "I don't see anything." "Don't you see the net?" "What net?" Benedict looked strangely at him. "Are they teaching you nothing in that boxy castle? Mezumiru's net." "Who's that?" "Aha!" Benedict let his head fall back. "The stars. That drift you are seeing above you there, it is Mezumiru's net. They say that she spreads it to catch her husband Isiki, who has run away. We Canuck call her Seda, the Dark Mother." Simon stared up at the dim points. It looked as though the thick black fabric separating Ostenard from some world of light was wearing thin. If he squinted, he could make out a certain fan shape to the arrangement. They're so faint. The sky is not clear, you are right. It is said that Mezumiru prefers it that way, that otherwise the bright light that the jewels of her net are making warns Isiki away. Still, there are often cloudy nights, and she is not catching him yet. Simon squinted. Mezumiru. Mezumiru, the moon woman. But you said that your people call her Seda? That is right. She is the mother of all, as the Kanuk believe. Simon thought for a moment. Then why do you call that, he pointed up, Mezumiru's net? Why not Seda's net? Binabik smiled and lifted his eyebrows. A good question. My people do call it that. Or actually, they are saying Seda's blanket. I travel more, however, and am learning other names, and after all is said, it is the Scythi who were here first. It is the Scythi who were long ago naming all the stars. The troll sat for a moment staring with Simon up at the black roof of the world. I know it, he said suddenly. I will go to singing you the song of Seda, or a little part, perhaps. It is a song of great length, after all. Should I essay the singing? Yes. Simon snuggled himself even deeper in his cloak. Sing, please. Kantaka, who had been snoring softly across the troll's legs, now woke up, raising her head to look this way and that, giving a low growl. Binabik, too, stared around, narrowing his eyes as he tried to pierce the gloom outside the campfire. A moment later, Kantaka, apparently satisfied that all was well, poked Binabik into a more pleasing configuration with her huge head, then settled back down and closed her eyes. Binabik patted her, took up his flute, and blew several preparatory notes. Be understanding, he said, that this can only be a shortness of the whole song. I will be explaining things. Seda's husband, by the Scythi named Isiki, my people are calling Kikasut. He is the lord of all birds. Solemnly, the troll began to chant in a high-pitched voice, strangely tuneful like the wind in a high place. He paused at the end of each line to pipe skirling notes on his flute. Water is flowing by Tohuk's cave, shining sky cave. Seda is spinning, Sky Lord's dark daughter, pale black-haired Seda. Bird King is flying on the star path, gleaming bright path. Now he sees Seda. Kikasut sees her, vows she'll be his. Give me your daughter who spins slender thread. Kikasut calls then, I'll clothe her finely, all in bright feathers. Tohuk, he listens, hears these fine words, rich bird king's words, thinks of the honor. Seda he'll give up, old greedy Tohuk. So, Binabik explained in his speaking voice, old Tohuk, the Sky Lord, is selling his daughter to Kikasut for a beautiful cape of feathers, which he will use to make the clouds. Seda is then going with her new husband to his country beyond the mountains, where she is becoming the queen of birds. But the marriage has not much happiness. Soon Kikasut, he begins to ignore her, coming home only to eat and curse at Seda. The troll laughed quietly. wiping the end of his flute on his fur collar. "Oh, Simon, this is always being such a length of story. Well, Seda goes to a wise woman, who tells that she could gain back Kikasut's wandering heart if she will be giving him children. With a charm the wise woman has given, made from bones and muckfoil and black snow, Seda is able then to conceive, and she gives birth to 9 children. Kikasut is hearing and sends word that he is coming to take them from her, so that it is properly raised as birds they will be, and not by Seda raised as useless moon children. When she is hearing this, Seda takes the 2 most young and hides them. Kikasut comes for taking away the others, and he asks of her the happenstances of the missing 2. Seda tells him they had become sick and dead. He goes away from her, and she curses him." Again he sang, "Kikasut winging, Seda she weeps, weeps for her lost, her children all taken, but for the hidden pair, Lingit and Yana. Sky Lord's grandchildren, Moon Woman's twins, secret and pale, Yana and Lingit, hid from their father, deathless she'll keep them." "You are seeing," Binabik interrupted himself, "Seda did not want her children to have mortalness and be dying as the birds and the beasts of the fields. They were her all and onlyness. Seda is mourning, lone and betrayed. Vengeance she plots, takes her bright jewels, Kikasut's love gift, weaves them together. Mountain top lofty, dark Seda climbs, blanket new woven, she spreads on night sky, a trap for her husband, thief of her children." Binabik trilled a melody for a while, wagging his head slowly from side to side. At last he put the flute down. "It is a song of strenuous length, Simon, but it speaks of most important things. It goes on to tell of the children, Lingit and Yana, and their choosing between the death of the moon and the death of the bird. The moon, you are seeing, dies, but then has return as itself. The birds die, but leave their egged young to survive them. Yana, we trolls think, chose the way of the moon death and was being the matriarch, a word meaning grandmother, the matriarch of the Scythi. The mortals, myself, and yourself, Simon friend, are of the descent of Lingit. But it is a very long song. Would you like to be hearing more sometime?" Simon made no reply. The song of the moon and the gentle brush of night's feathered wing had sent him swiftly down to sleep. Chapter 9. The Blood of St. Hodrund. It seemed that every time Simon opened his mouth to speak, or even to breathe deeply, it was immediately filled with leaves. No matter how often he bobbed and ducked, he could not avoid the branches that seemed to grab for his face like the greedy hands of children. "Binabik," he wailed, "why can't we go back to the road? I'm being torn to pieces." "Do not complain so much. We will soon be returning toward the road." It was infuriating to watch the tiny troll threading his way between the tangling twigs and branches. Easy for him to say, "Don't complain." The denser the forest got, the more slippery Binabik seemed to become, slithering gracefully through the thick, clutching underbrush, while Simon crashed on behind. Even Kamtaka bounded lightly along, leaving barely a ripple in the foliage behind her. Simon felt as though half of Old Heart must be clinging to him in the form of broken twigs and scratching thorns. But why are we doing this? Surely it wouldn't take any longer to follow the road around the edge of the forest than it's taking me to burrow through it inch by inch. Bennebic whistled for the wolf, who was momentarily out of sight. She soon loped back into view, and as the troll waited for Simon to catch up, he ruffled the thick collar of fur around her neck. "You are most correct, Simon," he said as the youth dragged up. "It is just as good time we might be making the longer way about. But," he held up a stubby, admonitory finger, "there are other considerations." Simon knew he was supposed to ask. He didn't, but stood panting beside the small man and inspected the most recent of his lacerations. When the troll realized Simon would not rise to the bait, he smiled. "Why, you are asking curiously. What considerations? The answer is being all around, up every tree, and beneath all rocks. Feel. Smell." Simon stared miserably around him. All he could see were trees and brambles and even more trees. He groaned. No, is it no senses you have left at all?" Bennebic cried. "What manner of teachings did you have in that lumpish stone anthill, that castle?" Simon looked up. "I never said I lived in a castle." "It is having great obviousness in all your actions." Bennebic turned quickly around to face the barely visible deer trail they had been following. "You see," he said in a dramatic voice, "the land is a book that you should be reading. Every small thing," a cocky grin, "is having a story to tell. Trees, leaves, mosses, and stones all have written on them things of wonderful interest." "Oh, Elysian, no," Simon moaned and sank to the ground, dropping his head forward to rest on his knees. "Please don't read me the book of the forest right this moment, Bennebic. My feet ache and my head hurts." Bennebic leaned forward until his round face was inches from Simon's. After a moment's scrutiny of the youth's bramble-matted hair, the troll straightened up again. "I suppose we may quietly rest," he said, trying to hide his disappointment. "I will tell you of these things in a later moment." "Thank you," Simon mumbled into his knees. Simon avoided the task of hunting for supper that night by the simple expedient of falling asleep the moment they made camp. Bennebic only shrugged, took a long draught from his water bag, and a similar one from his wineskin, then made a short walking tour of the area, Kantaka sniffing sentry at his side. After an undistinguished but filling meal of dried meat, he cast the knuckle bones to the accompaniment of Simon's deep breathing. On the first pass he turned up "Wingless Bird," "Fish Spear," and "The Shadowed Path." Unsettled, he closed his eyes and hummed a tuneless tune for a while as the sound of night insects slowly rose about him. When he threw again, the first two had changed to "Torch at the Cave Mouth" and "Balking Ram," but the "Shadowed Path" turned up again, the bones propped against each other like the leavings of some fastidious carnivore. Not the sort to follow the bones to hasty decisions, his master had taught him too well, Bennebic nonetheless slept when he finally could, with his staff and bag cradled close. When Simon awakened, the troll presented him with a satisfying meal of roasted eggs. "Quail," he said, "some berries, and even the pale orange buds of a flowering tree, which proved quite edible and rather sweet in an odd, chewy way." The morning's walking also went considerably easier than the previous days. The country was gradually becoming more open, the trees more distantly spaced. The troll had been rather quiet all morning. Simon felt sure that his disinterest in Benebic's woodlore was the reason. As they were coming down a long, gentle slope, the sun high in its morning climb, he felt driven to say something. "Benebic, do you want to tell me about the Book of the Forest today?" His companion smiled, but it was a smaller, tighter grin than Simon was used to seeing. "Of course, friend Simon, but I am afraid I have given you a wrong thinking. You see, when I am speaking of the land as a book, I am not suggesting that you should be reading it to improve your spiritual well-being like a religious tome, although paying attention to your surroundings for that reason is certainly possible. No, I am speaking of it more as a book of physic, something one learns for the sake of health." It is truly amazing, Simon thought, how easy it is for this little fellow to confuse me, and without trying. Aloud he said, "Health? Book of physic?" Benebic's face took on a sudden look of seriousness. "For your living or dying, Simon. You are not in your home now. You are not in my home, although I am undoubtedly being an easier guest than you here. Even the city, for all the ages they have watched the sun as it is rolling around and around the skies, even they do not claim Aldhart as theirs." Benebic stopped and laid his hand on Simon's wrist, then squeezed. "This place, where we stand, this great forest, is the oldest place. That is why it is called, as your people say, Aldhart. It is always the old heart of Ostenard. Even these trees of younger age," he poked with his stick on all sides, "were pitting themselves against flooding, wind, and fire before your great King John was first drawing baby breath on the Warrenstein Island." Simon looked around, blinking. "Others," Benebic continued, "others there are, some that I have seen, whose roots are growing into the very rock of time. Older they are than all the kingdoms of Man and Scythia that were thrown up in glory and were then crumbling in obscurity." Benebic squeezed his wrist again, and Simon, looking down the slope into the vast bowl of trees, felt suddenly small, infinitesimal, like an insect crawling up the sheer side of a cloud-lancing mountain. Why are you saying these things to me?" he asked at last, sucking breath and fighting back something that felt like tears. "Because," said Benebic, reaching up and patting his arm, "because you must not think that the forest, the wide world, is anything like the alleyways and such of Urchester. You must watch, and you must be thinking and thinking." A moment later, the troll was off again. Simon stumbled after him. What had brought all this on? Now the crowding trees seemed a hostile, whispering throng. He felt like he had been slapped. "Wait!" he called. "Thinking about what?" But Benebic did not slow down or turn. "Come now!" he called over his shoulder. His voice was even but curt. "We must be making better time. With luck, we will reach the knock before darkness is falling." He whistled for Kantaka. "Please, Simon," he said, and those were his last words for the morning. "There!" Benebic finally broke his silence. The pair stood atop a ridge, the treetops a humped blanket of green below. The knock. 2 more strands of trees were stair-stepped below them, and beyond those, a sloping ocean of grass stretched out to the hills, which stood profiled by the afternoon sun. "That is Weldhelm, or at least its foothills." The troll pointed with his staff. The shadowed, silhouetted hills, rounded like the backs of sleeping animals, seemed only a stone's toss away across the expanse of green. "How far are they?" The hills, Simon asked. And how did we get so high up? I don't remember climbing. Climbing we did not do, Simon. The knock is a dipping down place, sunken low like someone has been pushing at it. If you could be looking backward, he waved back up the ridge, you would see that where we now stand we are a little lower than the Irchester plain. And, to give your second question answering, the hills are being quite some far ways, but your sight is deceiving you to make them close. In truth, we had better be at climbing if we wish to make my stopping place, with sun still on us. The troll trotted a few paces along the ridge. Simon, he said, as he turned, the boy could see some of the tightness had left his jaw and mouth. I must tell you that even those Weldhelm hills are babies only compared to my Minterhoek. Still, to be near high places again will be like wine. Suddenly childlike again, Simon thought, watching Benebik's short legs carrying him rapidly down the slope between the trees. No, he thought then, not childlike, that's just his size, but young, very young. How old is he, anyway? The troll was in fact becoming smaller and smaller even as he watched. Simon cursed mildly and hurried after him. They went fairly quickly down the broad and well-forested ridges, even though actual climbing was necessary in some places. Simon was not at all surprised by the dexterity which Benebik could exercise, leaping softly as a feather, kicking up less dust than a squirrel, showing a sureness of foot that Simon was sure the rams of Canuck themselves would not scorn. Benebik's nimbleness did not surprise him, but his own did. He was recovering a little from his earlier deprivations, it seemed, and a few good meals had gone far toward restoring the Simon who had once been known around the Hayhold as the Ghost Boy. Excuse me. The fearless scaler of towers and tumbler off of walls. While no match for his mountain-born companion, he nevertheless felt he made a good account of himself. It was Kantaka who had a few problems, not because she was not sure-footed, but instead because of the few steep downward climbs, childishly easy with handholds, that were too far to jump. Faced with these situations, she growled a little, sounding more annoyed than upset, and trotted off to find some longer way down, rejoining them usually within a short time. When they finally found a winding deer track down the last hummock, the afternoon sun had fallen below the middle of the sky, warm on their necks and bright in their faces. A tepid breeze riffled the leaves but failed to dry the sweat on their brows. Simon's cloak, tied around his waist, made him as middle-heavy as if he had eaten a large meal. To his surprise, when they at last reached the upper slopes of the meadow, the beginnings of the knock, Benebik elected to bear northeast, hugging the line of the forest rather than striking out directly across the whispering, gently undulating ocean of grass. But the Weldhelm Road is on the other side of the hills, Simon said. It would be so much faster to... Benebik held up a stubby paw, and Simon lapsed into sullen silence. There is faster, Simon, friend, and then there is being faster, he said, and the cheerful knowingness of his tone almost, but not quite, incited Simon to say something mocking and childish, but temporarily satisfying. When he had carefully shut his already opened mouth, Benebik continued. Do you see, I thought it might be nice, be a niceness, a nicety, to take some respite tonight in a place where you may be sleeping in a bed and eating at a table. What are you thinking about that, All his resentment boiled away at that like steam from beneath a raised pot lid. A bed? Are we going to an inn? Recalling Shem's story of the puka and the 3 wishes, Simon knew how a person felt seeing his first wish made real, until he abruptly remembered the Erkengaard and the Hanged Thief. And that's not really the end of a section, but that's where we're going to end. Because it's 2 o'clock, straight up. So with that, I am going to wrap it up for the night. It's very kind of you all to join me, as always, and I appreciate it muchly. I will be reading again at 7 p.m., where we will get further into the history of the Knock and a visit to St. Hodoran's, which, of course, does not quite turn out the way anybody, at least not Benedict or Simon, expected to. And I guess with that, I think that is it. So I want you all to take good care of yourselves, take good care of your friends and loved ones, take good care of anybody else that you can help too. We will strive together to make the world a better place. And I will see those of you who can make it back tomorrow. And those who can't, I will see you the next time you can drop by. And hello to some various other folks that showed up after I'd already read the hellos, like Maria Jose and Amandara. You'll have to tell me how to pronounce that correctly, Amandara. And anybody else that I missed. And again, nice of you to come. And I will see you very soon. So peace. Have a good day.